All right, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning to all distinguished guests. I'm pleased to join you from Saly in Senegal, and I'm particularly honored by PPD's invitation. As a member of the Rockefeller Foundation team that contributed to the launch of PPD in 1994, I am very happy to see that the organization is thriving a quarter century after. So I'm very happy to be with you. My presentation will focus on the ongoing work on the demographic dividend in Sub-Saharan Africa, and it will not be technical at all because all the details of this demographic dividend have been discussed in the preceding discussion. The Sustainable Development Goals express world leaders' commitment to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that all people enjoy peace and prosperity. Hence the sacrosanct principle of leaving no one behind. By shifting the focus from human numbers to human lives, the ICPD plan of action is perfectly aligned with the SDGs. Achieving the goals of the ICPD would go a long way in achieving the SDGs. Its goals are also central to efforts aimed at harnessing the demographic dividend. African leaders realized a few years back that it would be impossible to achieve the SDGs and the Africa we want without accelerated economic growth that is sustained for long periods of time. They also realized that changing demographics in much of the continent is providing a unique opportunity for accelerated growth, provided that the right investments are made right now. This is why they designated 2017 the year of the demographic dividend and developed a continental roadmap. All African countries are working now to tailor the continental roadmap to their own realities. 2 African centers of excellence are working full-time to help them develop and implement the right policies and programs. These 2 centers of excellence are closely supported by UNFPA. They work collaboratively with UNFPA to make this happen. What they do is really focus on research capacity strengthening and policy dialogue. They use population data to develop country profiles, guide policy formulation and program design, guide prioritization and resource allocation, help keep programs on track through monitoring and evaluation, and strengthen country capacity for self-reliance, which self-reliance is a key concept in South-South cooperation. You learn, but you make your own resource, put your own resources where your interest and strategy is. The first center, I talked about 2 centers. The first one is the African Institute for Development Policy, and I will not talk, these are the achievements that have been produced by AFIDET, and the director of that institute is the person, Dr. Elia Zulu, who gave the keynote address. It's based in Nairobi and covering the Eastern and Southern African countries, which are mainly English-speaking. It played a key role in placing the demographic dividend in the agenda of the African Union Commission, supported 15 countries to develop DD profiles and policy options, supported 9 of the 15 countries to integrate the demographic dividend in medium and long-term development strategies, and it is planning to work more on developing DD delivery toolkits and performance monitoring and accountability frameworks. 200 government officers I have benefited from training on modeling and evidence interpretation. The second center is where I work. It's the Centre de Recherche en Économie et Finance Appliquée de Thiès in Senegal. It's CREFAT. It focuses on West and Central African countries, which are mainly French-speaking. And it worked on developing profiles for 22 countries in that region, developed a methodology to measure progress, which is NTA, National Transfer Accounts base, trained about 450 experts from the different countries, and 9 countries are starting observatories with CREFAT support, and it worked with the AU to develop a gender component. The presenter from Iran, UNFPA Iran, talked about the importance of gender in achieving the demographic dividend, and this is a way of measuring the contribution, what changes are occurring to make sure that women and girls are fully involved in the work we do. So 4 countries now are just starting to try and test that tool in Africa. The demographic dividend work in Sub-Saharan Africa provides a good example of South-South cooperation, but it has its own challenges. The 2 institutions that I talked about are very young institutions, and they are understaffed. They have limited resources and find it difficult to attract and retain high-level expertise. The available resources go to support activities with not much left for institutional strengthening. Sometimes also we face the difficulty of getting access to relevant databases. So our main collaborator in this work, UNFPA, can use its outstanding experience in institution building to address these challenges. I provide here the example of demographic training in the past, the bold initiative taken by the United Nations to address this lack of population scientists in Africa between 1970 and from the 1960s onward. 3 centers were created. One is the Cairo Demographic Center, which is the oldest in 1963 to serve the Arab countries. In 1971, IFOD was created in Yaoundé in Cameroon to serve the Francophone countries of Sub-Saharan Africa. And the Regional Institute for Population Studies in Accra was launched in 1972 to serve Anglophone Africa. The young UNFPA was born just in 1969, so just a few years before these centers were launched. But UNFPA played a central role in supporting RIPS and IFOD to train the first generation of population scientists in Sub-Saharan Africa. What can we learn from this experience? Let me go back a little bit. I wanted to say that, in fact, after UNFPA left, these centers are still, all of them, functioning without any problem and training more and more people for Africa. The lessons to learn from this experience is that we need to use a regional approach. That is what all South and South cooperation is about. To pool resources, realize economies of scale, address language barriers. We need a critical mass of expertise, attractive remuneration to retain the scarce expertise, reinforce capacity to attract donor funding, and particularly important, long-term investment in institutional strengthening. Country commitment is critical, and as I said, all the centers of excellence that are training demographers are still functioning despite UN withdrawal in 1999. So UNFPA can use this experience really to strengthen the ongoing work on the demographic dividend. The countries are contributing, particularly much of the work of CREFAT is funded by the countries themselves, through UNFPA sometimes, but we have a lot of backing from UNFPA, both financial and technical. UNFPA support really, in order to help these centers meet the growing demand, UNFPA support needs to go to the next level to help reduce challenges of data access, support resource mobilization through SSC mechanisms, and foster synergies, particularly between those two centers, because they are covering the whole of Sub-Saharan Africa. So I believe that a more intentional effort in institutional strengthening is important with those centers to meet the growing demand from the different countries. So that was my brief presentation, and I thank you very much for your attention.